Hello there and welcome in. If you have clicked on this episode today, I want you to take one slow, deep breath right now, because what we are about to talk about is something truly powerful. The title of today's conversation is Destroy All Your Enemies. And I know that sounds bold, maybe even a little dramatic, but trust me, by the end of this episode, you will see that destroying your enemies has very little to do with anyone else out there.
Right. And honestly, when I first heard that title, my mind immediately went to a specific person. You know, that one individual who gets under your skin, who says the wrong thing at the wrong time, who makes you feel small or dismissed. And I thought, yes, finally, we are going to talk about how to handle those difficult people in our lives who just seem to drain everything out of us.
And that is such a natural first reaction, Abel, because we're human. When we hear the word enemy, we picture a face, we picture a moment, we picture a conversation that went badly, or maybe words that were said to us that we have never quite been able to let go of. But here's the deep truth that we are unpacking together today. The most powerful enemies we face are almost never standing in front of us.
That is such an important point, and it actually takes me back to something that happened not too long ago. I had a disagreement with someone, and it was not even a huge argument. It was a misunderstanding, really, a small thing. But that night, I could not sleep. I was lying there in the dark, replaying the whole conversation over and over again in my mind, getting angrier each time I replayed it.
Oh, I think every single person listening to us right now can relate to that feeling completely. That midnight replay of an argument is one of the most exhausting things a human being can experience. Your body is in bed, your eyes are closed, but your mind is fully awake, fighting a battle that has already ended hours ago. And the other person, they're probably sleeping just fine.
Exactly, and that is the painful irony of it all. The person I was angry with had probably forgotten the whole thing by the time they got home, but I was still there at 2 in the morning, rehearsing my perfect comeback, writing the speech I should have said, letting that person live rent-free in my head for hours and hours. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong with my approach.
And that realization, that moment of awareness, is actually the very first step toward destroying your enemies. Not with aggression, not with revenge, not with winning an argument, but with that quiet, honest moment when you look inward and say, wait a minute, I am the one suffering here. The other person has moved on, and I'm the one holding this heavy weight all by myself.
Yes, and I love how you framed that. The weight is something you are choosing to carry, even if it doesn't feel like a choice in the moment. It feels automatic, it feels necessary, it feels like justice somehow. But it's not. It's just pain that you're keeping alive inside yourself when you could be letting it rest.
Welcome back to the Mr. English Fluent Tutor Podcast, your English podcast for daily life English, real conversations, and easy English listening practice. I'm Anna.
And I'm Abel. Yeah, this is the place where you learn real English from real talk, from the kinds of conversations that actually happen in daily life, in the kitchen, in the office, on a late-night walk when your mind just won't quiet down. We are so glad you were here with us today.
We truly are, and today's episode is one of those conversations that goes beyond just English practice. Yes, we're helping you build your listening skills and expand your vocabulary, but we're also talking about something that touches everyone's daily experience, and that's the challenge of handling negativity, conflict, difficult people, and most importantly, that very loud, very harsh critic that lives inside your own head.
And I think the inner critic is the enemy we talk about the least, even though it might be the enemy we deal with the most. Because external people, you can walk away from them, you can end a phone call, you can leave a room. But that inner voice, it follows you everywhere. It wakes up with you, it shows up at lunch, it whispers doubts to you at 3 in the morning.
That's beautifully said, Abel, and it leads us perfectly into our first big idea for today, which I want to call the room with two windows. Imagine you're sitting in a room, and this room has two windows. On one side, there is a gray, stormy window. The sky is dark, the rain is heavy, everything outside looks cold and unwelcoming, and it's pointed directly at the people and situations that have hurt you.
Oh, wow, I love that image already. So the gray window is where you stare when you're focused on resentment, when you keep looking at the person who wronged you, replaying what they did, cataloging all their faults and failures. It's a very familiar window for a lot of people, and it's very easy to get trapped staring through it for hours or even years.
Exactly, Abel. And here's the thing about that stormy window. It's always there. Nobody's asking you to brick it up or pretend it doesn't exist. The hurt is real. The conflict happened. The difficult person is real. But in this same room, on the opposite wall, there is another window. And through this one, there's a green, beautiful garden, sunlight, fresh air, growth, and space that belongs entirely to you.
And choosing to look through that garden window means deliberately shifting your attention toward your own growth, your own peace, your own future. It means saying, I acknowledge the storm, I see it, I felt it, but I am choosing not to let it be the only thing I look at today. That shift in attention is not weakness, it's actually one of the most disciplined things a person can do.
100%. And I think one word that comes up naturally here is the word perspective. Perspective is the particular way that you think or see something, the angle from which you view a situation. When you're locked on the stormy window, your perspective is narrow, painful, and backward-looking. When you choose the garden window, your perspective opens up and becomes forward-looking and full of possibility.
That makes so much sense, Anna. And let me give you a simple daily life sentence using that word perspective. You might say, after taking a long walk, I gained a new perspective on the argument, and I realized it was not worth my energy. That's a beautiful, real sentence you can actually use when talking about how your thinking shifted after some time and space.
I love that example. And speaking of shifts, let's talk about another word that connects beautifully to our room with two windows idea, and that's the word mindset. Your mindset is the set of beliefs and attitudes you carry that shape how you experience and respond to the world around you. It's like the operating system of your inner life, and you can absolutely update it.
Yes, and I think people sometimes believe that mindset is something you're born with, like a fixed thing. Either you're a positive, resilient person or you're not. But that is simply not true. Mindset is something you practice, something you build, something you choose to work on day by day, conversation by conversation, reaction by reaction. And that is genuinely encouraging to me.
It is so encouraging, and it leads us directly into our next powerful idea, which I want to call the stepping stones analogy. A lot of people feel overwhelmed when they think about conquering their inner enemies, things like fear, self-doubt, comparison, anger, because they imagine they need to build a perfect, massive bridge overnight to get from where they are now to complete inner peace.
Oh, I know that feeling very well. You think, well, I have been anxious or resentful or self-critical for 20 years, so I would need to do something enormous and dramatic to change that. And that thought alone is so heavy that you end up not starting at all. You stay on the bank, staring at the river, paralyzed by the size of the crossing ahead of you.
Right, and here is the beautiful truth that the stepping stones analogy offers us. You do not need to build the entire bridge tonight. You do not need to feel completely healed or fearless or confident by tomorrow morning. You just need to step onto one small stone, one small step forward, one small negative thought you choose not to follow, one moment of choosing calm over reaction.
That makes so much sense, Anna. Because when you think of it as stepping stones, the task becomes manageable. Today's stepping stone might just be pausing for 5 seconds before you respond to a message that triggers you. That is it. That one pause is a stepping stone, and each stone you step on brings you one step closer to the other side of that river.
Exactly, Abel, and this connects to a word we should absolutely talk about today, which is the word boundary. A boundary is a personal limit you set to protect your emotional and mental well-being. It is the line you draw that says, this behavior is acceptable, and this behavior is not something I will allow into my space. And learning to set boundaries is one of the most powerful stepping stones you can take.
I really love that definition. Because boundaries are often misunderstood. People sometimes think that setting a boundary is an act of hostility or rejection. but really it is an act of self-respect and clarity. A simple daily life sentence using that word might be, I told my colleague that calling me after 9 o'clock at night was outside my boundary, and she completely understood.
That is a perfect sentence, Abel. And what I love about it is that it is calm, it is clear, and it does not involve any drama or aggression. Which brings me to our next big idea for today. And I want to call this one the clean knife analogy. When you're in a difficult conversation with someone who is challenging you, what is your first instinct?
Honestly, my first instinct used to be to use the most complicated, the most sophisticated, the most ironclad argument I could construct. I wanted to build this enormous, airtight case, using every piece of evidence and every high-level word I could think of. I thought that the more complex and thorough my argument, the more surely I would win the conversation.
And how did that usually work out for you, Abel?
Terribly, if I'm being completely honest. It usually made things worse. Because the moment you start using overly complex language and building these massive arguments during an emotional conversation, you create a fog. The other person stops hearing you. They just see aggression. They feel overwhelmed and they shut down completely, which is the opposite of what you want.
Yes, exactly. And this is what the clean knife analogy is about. A clean, sharp knife does not need to be heavy or complicated. It cuts clearly, efficiently, and precisely. And in the same way, simple, clear, calm communication is always sharper and more effective than complicated, heavy arguments during a difficult moment. Clarity is the real power.
That image is so useful and so practical. So instead of saying something like, I find your persistent disregard for my contributions to be an egregious demonstration of professional disrespect, you could simply say, when you interrupt me in meetings, I feel like my ideas are not being heard and I would like that to change. Clean, clear, sharp.
Beautiful example, Abel. And that kind of clear communication is deeply connected to a word we should absolutely talk about together, which is the word dynamic. A dynamic between two people describes the way their relationship or interaction works, the patterns, the energy, the push and pull between them. And the interesting thing is, when one person changes their communication style, the dynamic of the whole relationship shifts.
Oh, wow. I love that point. So if I decide to stop over-explaining and start using clear, calm sentences, the dynamic between me and that difficult person naturally begins to change, even if they haven't changed at all. I've shifted my part of the equation, and that shifts the whole thing. A good sentence for dynamic might be, once I stopped reacting emotionally, the whole dynamic of our friendship changed for the better.
That's a really rich sentence, and I think it perfectly captures how empowering this idea is. You do not need the other person to change first. When you change your approach, the dynamic changes, and that's real power, because it means the solution is always at least partially in your hands, regardless of what the other person chooses to do.
Mm-hmm. And you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of one of my favorite ideas from today's conversation, which is the magic word, yet. Because when I think about changing my communication style or setting clearer boundaries, my inner voice sometimes says, Abel, you are not strong enough to handle toxic people. And that inner voice feels very final and very true in the moment.
Yes, and that inner critic speaks in very definitive language, does it not? It doesn't say maybe or sometimes. It says, you are not good enough. You cannot do this. You are too emotional. You always get this wrong. It uses permanent, final language that makes the problem feel like it's forever. And that's where the magic word yet comes in to completely change the game.
So Anna, walk us through exactly how that works, because I think this is one of the most practically useful ideas in today's whole conversation. When my inner voice says, I am not strong enough to handle toxic people, what does adding the word yet actually do to that sentence and to my brain?
Such a great question, Abel. So when you say, I am not strong enough to handle toxic people, that is a closed door. It is a final verdict. Your brain hears it and stops looking for solutions because it believes the case is closed. But the moment you add the word yet, you get, I am not strong enough to handle toxic people yet, and suddenly the door is open just a crack.
That one small word completely changes the meaning and the feeling of the sentence. It goes from a wall to a road. It says, I am not there right now, but I am moving toward it. I am on the path. Progress is possible. And honestly, that tiny shift in language is the difference between staying stuck in self-doubt and actually beginning to grow your emotional strength one day at a time.
Exactly. And I want to tie this back to a really important word for today, which is the word adversary. An adversary is an opponent, someone who is against you, someone who creates difficulty or challenge in your path. And what is so fascinating is that once you start using the word yet, your inner critic, your inner adversary, starts to lose its power over you significantly.
I love that connection, Anna. And here is a daily life sentence for the word adversary. She treated her fear of public speaking not as a permanent weakness, but as an adversary she was actively learning to overcome. That sentence beautifully captures the idea that your challenges are not your identity. They are simply opponents that you are in the process of defeating, step by step.
That is a wonderful sentence, Abel, and it brings such an empowering energy to the idea of personal growth. Speaking of growth, I want to move to another idea that I think is going to resonate with a lot of people listening today, and that is what I call the no teacher behind the sofa concept. This one is a bit playful, but it makes a very serious and very freeing point.
Oh, I'm intrigued by this one. The image of a teacher behind the sofa is immediately funny and a little bit unsettling at the same time. Please, Anna, explain this one because I want to understand exactly where you're taking us with it.
So here's the idea. Imagine you're a student and you're sitting in your living room trying to handle a difficult situation. Maybe someone has upset you or wronged you, and you feel this enormous pressure to respond perfectly, to handle it in exactly the right way, to say exactly the right words, to be completely composed, because somewhere you feel like you're being watched and graded.
Oh, yes, I know that feeling. That sense of invisible judgment, like someone somewhere is evaluating every move you make in a conflict, and if you don't handle it perfectly, if you show one moment of vulnerability or make one wrong word choice, you have failed some kind of test, and everyone will know it.
Exactly, Abel. And the freeing truth is this. There is no teacher behind the sofa. There's no invisible authority figure with a red pen waiting to circle your mistakes and mark you down for not handling your conflicts with perfect eloquence. Real life is not an examination hall. It's a messy, beautiful, imperfect space where doing your honest best is always enough.
And I think that message is especially important for people who are perfectionists when it comes to conflict, people who avoid setting a boundary or speaking their truth because they're afraid of not doing it perfectly. But you cannot wait for perfect conditions to begin protecting your peace. You just begin imperfectly, honestly, and with good intention.
Yes, and here's the beautiful thing about choosing peace over revenge or choosing calm over aggression. Even if it comes out slightly messy, even if your voice shakes a little or you forget one of the things you wanted to say, the choice itself has already been the victory. The moment you decide not to carry bitterness or seek retaliation, you have already won the most important battle.
That makes so much sense, Anna. Because revenge or resentment, when you really examine them, they don't actually give you what you're looking for. They feel like they will bring satisfaction or justice, but they almost never do. They just keep you tied to the person or situation that hurt you, when what you actually want more than anything is to be free.
And that word, free, connects directly to one of our vocabulary words for today, which is the word liberate. To liberate means to set free, to release from confinement, control, or burden. And this is exactly what happens when you genuinely choose forgiveness or detachment over resentment. You don't liberate the other person, you liberate yourself. You're the one who gets to walk away free.
That distinction is so powerful, Anna, because I think people sometimes resist forgiveness because they feel like it means the other person wins, like it means what they did was okay, and now they get to escape any consequences. But forgiveness is not about them at all. It's entirely about you and your own freedom. A sentence for liberate might be, when she finally let go of the grudge, she felt completely liberated from a weight she had been carrying for 2 years.
That is a truly beautiful sentence, Abel, and it captures the feeling so precisely. That lightness, that release, that sudden sense of space in your chest that you had forgotten was even possible. And it doesn't even necessarily happen all at once, which brings me to our next analogy for today. And this one is my personal favorite. I call it the slow friend analogy.
Oh, I love a good analogy, Anna. What is the slow friend all about? Because already just the name of it makes me feel like it's going to be warm and gentle and relatable.
So here's the picture I want you to hold in your mind. Imagine you're going for a long afternoon walk with a dear friend. You're excited and you set off at a brisk pace, but your friend walks much slower than you. They're not slow because anything is wrong with them, they simply have a different pace, and you have two choices in this situation.
Oh, I already see where this is going, and I love it. So you could get frustrated and keep walking ahead, turning around every few steps to check how far behind your friend is, getting increasingly annoyed that they're not keeping up with your pace, which would make the whole walk feel tense and unpleasant for both of you.
Exactly. Or you could slow down, breathe, enjoy the scenery, and let your friend catch up at their own natural pace. And the slow friend in this analogy is your emotional maturity, your inner calm, your deep confidence. These things don't arrive as an instant shock. They develop gradually, organically, at their own pace. And your job is simply to keep walking and let them catch up.
Oh, wow. I love that point so deeply because I think so many people, including myself, have given up on building emotional resilience because it didn't arrive fast enough. They tried once to respond calmly in a conflict, and it didn't go perfectly, and they concluded that peace and maturity were simply not available to them. But the slow friend is still coming. It hasn't abandoned you.
It has absolutely not abandoned you. And every single time you choose to pause before reacting, every time you look through the garden window instead of the stormy one, every time you step onto one small stepping stone, you're essentially slowing down and waiting for your slow friend to catch up. And one day, maybe sooner than you expect, you'll look beside you and your friend will be right there.
That is such a hopeful and comforting picture, Anna, and I think it applies so directly to the way we sometimes talk to ourselves during the process of personal growth. We rush toward the destination, then beat ourselves up for not arriving quickly enough. But growth is not a sprint, it's a walk, and the best walks are the unhurried ones where you actually notice the scenery along the way.
Yes, beautifully said, Abel. And one of the most powerful forms of resentment that we have not yet spoken about directly today is self-resentment. That particular flavor of inner criticism where you're not just fighting an external enemy, you're fighting yourself. You're punishing yourself for past mistakes, for things you said or didn't say, for opportunities you let pass.
Oh, yes. Self-resentment is its own category entirely, and I think it can be even more exhausting than outward resentment, because you can't leave the room. You can't block yourself or take a different route home to avoid running into yourself. You're the person you spend every second of every day with, so if you've declared yourself your own worst enemy, that's an incredibly tiring war to be fighting.
And this is where that word resentment deserves its proper introduction as one of our vocabulary words today. Resentment is the feeling of bitter indignation or anger felt because of something you believe is unfair, whether someone else did it to you or you did it to yourself. It is that slow burning feeling that sits in the background and colors everything slightly darker than it should be.
And a sentence for resentment in daily life might be, he carried resentment toward his old boss for years, not realizing that the person it was hurting the most was himself. That sentence is real, is it not? Because resentment has a sneaky way of feeling like it is directed outward at someone else, when in reality it lives entirely inside you and affects only your own peace and health.
That sentence is so real, Abel, and so important. And here's the antidote to both outward and self-directed resentment that I want to offer as one of our closing ideas for today. It is simply this: treat yourself with the same patience and compassion that you would offer a good friend who came to you with the exact same struggles that you are facing.
That is such a gentle and yet profound instruction. Because most of us are dramatically more forgiving toward other people than we are toward ourselves. If a friend came to me and said, Abel, I lost my temper yesterday in a conversation and I am feeling terrible about it, I would say, you are human, you are learning, it happens. What matters is what you do next. But when I make the same mistake, I am so much harsher with myself.
Yes, and that gap between how we treat others and how we treat ourselves is one of the root causes of so much unnecessary internal suffering. The inner critic uses a completely different rulebook for you than for everyone else. And part of destroying your enemies, part of winning that inner war, is simply closing that gap, one kind, honest thought at a time.
That is such a gentle and yet profound instruction. Because most of us are dramatically more forgiving toward other people than we are toward ourselves. If a friend came to me and said, Abel, I lost my temper yesterday in a conversation and I am feeling terrible about it, I would say, you are human, you are learning, it happens. What matters is what you do next. But when I make the same mistake, I am so much harsher with myself.
Yes, and that gap between how we treat others and how we treat ourselves is one of the root causes of so much unnecessary internal suffering. The inner critic uses a completely different rulebook for you than for everyone else. And part of destroying your enemies, part of winning that inner war, is simply closing that gap, one kind, honest thought at a time.
And you know, Anna, I want to come back to something you said earlier about the garden window, because I think it connects to one more really important practical tip before we begin to wrap up our conversation today. And that is the idea of choosing where you invest your daily attention and energy deliberately and consciously.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where everything we have discussed today comes together so beautifully. Because every tip we have talked about, whether it is the stepping stones, the clean knife, the magic word yet, the slow friend, every single one of them is ultimately about the same core skill, which is the skill of consciously choosing where your attention goes, moment by moment, day by day.
And attention is finite. It is a limited resource. Every minute you spend staring through that stormy window, rehearsing arguments, cataloging grievances, planning responses to people who have already moved on, that is a minute you are not spending looking through the garden window, building something, creating something, growing something that actually belongs to your future.
Exactly, Abel. And I think that framing, the idea that attention is a limited and precious resource, makes the whole conversation feel very practical and grounded. It's not just about being a nice, forgiving person, although that's wonderful too. It's about being smart with your energy. It's about recognizing that your peace of mind is genuinely valuable and choosing not to let difficult people or difficult thoughts spend it on your behalf.
That makes so much sense, Anna. And I think it's also worth saying clearly and directly, choosing not to engage with negativity, choosing not to retaliate, choosing to focus on your own growth rather than on someone else's behavior, none of that makes you weak. None of that means you have lost. It actually means you are the only one in the room who understands what winning really means.
Yes, and real winning, the kind of winning that actually changes your life and your experience of daily existence, is internal. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that your peace is protected. It's the deep, sustainable strength that grows inside you when you consistently choose growth over bitterness, clarity over complexity, and self-compassion over self-punishment. That's the real victory.
And I think about the times in my own life when I've actually achieved that kind of internal victory, even briefly, and it feels completely different than winning an argument or getting an apology from someone who wronged me. It feels lighter. It feels like you have put down something very heavy that you had been carrying for a very long time without even realizing how much it was slowing you down.
That image of putting something heavy down is so perfect, Abel. And I think it's a beautiful bridge into our word review for today. Because there's one more word I want to make sure we have covered clearly before we move into our final summary. And that is the word liberate, which we touched on briefly, but I want to make sure we revisit with full clarity.
Yes, absolutely. And we already gave a wonderful sentence for liberate, but I want to add one more dimension to it. To liberate yourself from the weight of resentment or self-doubt does not necessarily require a dramatic moment of revelation. Sometimes it is as quiet and ordinary as deciding on a regular Tuesday morning that you are simply done carrying this particular burden and you're going to set it down.
Exactly right, Abel. And that ordinary Tuesday morning decision is available to every single person who is listening to our conversation today. It doesn't require a retreat, it doesn't require years of therapy, it doesn't require the other person to apologize or change. It just requires one honest, courageous decision that says, I'm choosing my own peace over this old pain, starting right now.
Beautiful. And Anna, before we head into our final summary, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who is listening to this episode right now in their own specific situation. Whether you're dealing with a difficult coworker, a complicated family relationship, a long-standing internal battle with self-doubt, or just the general noise of negativity that tries to crowd into daily life, this conversation is for you.
It truly is, and I want you to hear this clearly. The fact that you are here, listening, learning, and thinking about these ideas is already proof that you are choosing the garden window. You are already stepping onto a stone. You are already walking while your slow friend of inner peace is on the way to catch up with you. You are already in the process of destroying your enemies, and you're doing it beautifully.
That is so encouraging, Anna. Okay, let me give us all a clear and comprehensive summary of everything we have explored together today, because there's been so much richness in this conversation, and I want everyone to leave with a strong, organized picture of the ideas they can take into their daily life, starting right now.
Please do, Abel. This is your moment. Summarize us home.
All right, so today we talked about destroying your enemies, and we discovered that the most powerful enemies are often internal, like self-doubt, resentment, and fear, or they are external people whose negativity we have been allowing to live inside our heads without paying rent. We talked about the room with two windows, choosing to look toward the garden of personal growth rather than staying locked on the storm of past hurts. We talked about taking it one stepping stone at a time, not trying to build the whole bridge at once, just one small positive choice right now. We talked about using a clean knife, keeping your communication clear and calm rather than complex and aggressive, because clarity is always sharper. We talked about the magic word yet, turning final-sounding statements of weakness into active journeys of progress. We talked about the no teacher behind the sofa idea, remembering that real life is not a test, and choosing peace imperfectly is still choosing peace. And we ended with the slow friend. Your emotional maturity is on its way. You just need to keep walking and let it catch up to you.
That is an absolutely wonderful summary, Abel, and I love how each of those ideas connects to the next in such a natural, flowing way. They're not separate tips. They are really one big story about how to take back your own inner space and choose the life you actually want to be living.
Exactly, Anna. And for anyone who wants to take one immediate action after this episode, I would say this. Pick one of those 6 ideas, just one, the one that felt most alive to you today, and try it in one real situation this week. Do not try to do all 6 at once. One stepping stone, one shift, one garden window moment. That is enough to begin.
I love that. And now I want to speak directly to you, our amazing listener and our wonderful community. I would love for you to drop a comment below this video right now and share with us one inner enemy, just one, that you are choosing to destroy today. Maybe it is doubt that tells you that you are not capable enough. Maybe it's procrastination that keeps you from starting. Maybe it's comparison that makes you feel like everyone else is ahead. Whatever yours is, name it in the comments, because naming it is the very first stepping stone.
Yes, and we genuinely read your comments, so please do share. We want to hear what resonated with you today and what you're working on. This community is one of the most thoughtful and motivated groups of English learners anywhere, and every comment you leave makes this space richer for everyone who is part of it.
And if you enjoyed today's conversation, if it helped your English listening skills and also gave you something real to think about and work with in your daily life, please share this episode with one person in your life who might need to hear these ideas right now. Sometimes the right message at the right time can genuinely change the direction of someone's day or even their year.
That is such a wonderful thought, Anna. Sharing is one of the most generous things you can do for someone you care about, and it also helps our channel grow and reach more learners around the world who are working to build their English fluency one real meaningful conversation at a time.
That is exactly right. All right, my wonderful friends, we have reached the end of today's episode, and what a journey it has been. From two windows to stepping stones, from clean knives to magic words, from teachers behind sofas to slow, beloved friends catching up on a peaceful afternoon walk. This has been one of my favorite conversations we have ever had on this channel.
Mine too, honestly. I feel genuinely lighter after this conversation, and I hope you do too. Remember, your peace is worth protecting, your growth is worth investing in, and every small choice you make toward clarity and calm is a victory worth celebrating, even if nobody else sees it, even if it happens quietly on a Tuesday morning when the house is still.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep speaking with confidence and ease. This is Anna.
And this is Abel, and you have been listening to the Mr. English Fluent Tutor Podcast. Bye-bye. Take care.
And hey, before you go, we've got another great video waiting for you right now. Just click on the next video to keep your English learning and your personal growth moving forward. We'll see you there.